Understanding how disasters happened to investors in the past can help current investors avoid them in the future. That's why, in today's video, we'll show you top 15 scams that ever happened in history. Number 15. Fire Festival. The disastrous Fire Festival has been in the news lately thanks to a Netflix documentary that exposed the inner workings of the 2017 calamity, which was billed as an expensive and ultra-luxe music festival for industry elites and VIPs. Thanks to false advertising, overpromising promoters, and a comedy of errors, the guests instead found themselves stranded in the Bahamas in unhygienic and crude accommodations with a dangerous shortage of supplies and, most famously, cold cheese sandwiches. The festival's creator, Billy McFarland, was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. Number 14. Bernie Madoff. In 2008, a little less than 90 years after Charles Ponzi became famous for the swindle that bears his name, Bernie Madoff fell from grace after the Ponzi scheme to end all Ponzi schemes came crashing down around him. Madoff, however, managed to keep his financial juggling act in the air for decades, starting as early as the 1970s. Once considered to be one of the world's greatest investors, Madoff in 2009 pleaded guilty to engineering the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, which gobbled up $19 billion. Number 13. Real-life war dogs. David Packouz and Ephraim DeVerley were two ambitious young arms dealers in their early 20s when they landed a massive $300 million government contract to acquire more than 100 million rounds of ammunition and deliver it to American-backed fighters in Afghanistan. The pair radically boosted their profits by breaking their contract and buying cheap Chinese-made ammo, a fact that the pair knew and went to great lengths to cover up. Number 12. Fannie Mae. At the peak of the housing bubble in 2006, mortgage giant Fannie Mae was ordered to pay $400 million for the actions of its top executives, which included manipulating the company's accounting, paying unearned maximum bonuses to themselves, and conspiring to cover up their actions. In the months that would follow, Fannie Mae would play a key role in what was arguably the greatest scam in American history, the 2008 recession and the mortgage lending and investing practices that caused it. Number 11. HealthSouth. HealthSouth was once one of the largest healthcare services companies in the world, but between 1996 and 2002, it served as a piggy bank for its leaders. Top executives perpetrated a $2.8 billion fraud based on the same accounting tricks Enron, WorldCom, and Tycho were allowed to conceal for so long. Richard Scrushy and other top executives were sentenced to prison for their roles in concealing debt, using the ill-gotten gains to finance outrageously lavish lifestyles. Number 10. WorldCom. Telecom giant WorldCom filed for bankruptcy in 2002 just 1 month after its auditor, Arthur Andersen LLP, was convicted for its role in the Enron scandal. The company's collapse and the loss to investors that followed dwarfed even Tycho and Enron thanks to a simple but effective fraud. WorldCom executives inflated income and cash flow by listing expenses as investments. CEO Bernard Ebbers was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Number 9. Tycho. In 2002, Tycho CEO Dennis Kozlowski and several other top company executives were charged with falsifying reports, using Enron-esque accounting tactics, and lying to regulators while pilfering the company and scamming its investors for hundreds of millions of dollars. They used the looted profits to finance cartoonishly lavish lifestyles that included a $6,000 shower curtain and $15,000 umbrella stand. Kozlowski served 6.5 years in prison and was released in 2015. Number 8. Enron. Like Keating in the 80s, the name Enron has come to embody the corporate greed, white-collar theft, and impotent regulations that defined Wall Street the early 2000s. The energy giant's top brass orchestrated a massive web of accounting lies designed to inflate profits, conceal debt, and fool both regulators and investors. Once a Wall Street darling, Enron stock peaked at $90.75 and plummeted to just 26 cents a share. Number 7. Slackin. In 2002, Reed Slackin pleaded guilty to 15 counts related to a Ponzi scheme he ran for 15 years that snared 800 wealthy investors who dumped nearly $600 million into the scam. The co-founder of Earthlink and an ordained Scientology minister, Slackin had high-level contacts in both Hollywood and the tech world, and his victim list included big names like Greta Van Susteren and Giovanni Ribisi. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Number 6. Centennial Technologies. In 2000, a man named Emmanuel Pines was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay $150 million in restitution for running a scam through his company, Centennial Technologies Incorporated. Just 4 years earlier in 1996, it was the top performer on the New York Stock Exchange. Among other frauds, the PC memory card maker inflated earnings, once even sending fruit baskets at Christmas time and reporting the gifts as products delivered to customers. Number 5. Charles Forbes. Although the coming wave of corporate crime would soon make his scam look standard, Charles Forbes masterminded what in 1998 might have been the greatest accounting scandal in history. The CEO of Sended, a travel and real estate company that evolved into Avis Budget Group, Forbes was eventually convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison for creating a web of corporate lies that deceived investors and wiped out $14 billion of market value in a single day. Number 4. Sam Israel III. Sam Israel III founded Bayou Hedge Fund Group in 1996, which quickly attracted hundreds of millions of dollars in investments. The fund, however, was a Ponzi scheme, and to avoid reporting poor returns, Israel created a phony accounting firm to audit Bayou in an effort to reassure investors. After bilking his clients out of $300 million, Israel was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 20 years, but in one of the more bizarre twists in fraud history, Israel faked his own suicide. Number 3. James Paul Lewis Jr. launches financial advisory consultants. In January 2004, James Paul Lewis Jr. was arrested in a Houston motel by authorities who charged him in an $814 million nationwide scam that bilked thousands of victims. Lewis operated his financial advisory consultants firm as a giant Ponzi scheme for 20 years, failing to ever make any real investments and instead, as with all Ponzi schemes, using money from new victims to pay earlier investors. Number 2. Jordan Belfort becomes the Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort might have disappeared into obscurity had he not published a successful memoir called The Wolf of Wall Street, which was adapted for the screen in a blockbuster movie starring, once again, Leonardo DiCaprio. Belfort spent 22 months in prison after stealing more than $100 million, where Belfort would buy large amounts of worthless stock to drive up its price and then sell his shares all at once. Number 1. Charles Keating Savings and Loan Scandal. Charles Keating's crimes found easy cover in 1980 Wall Street culture, where loose regulations and outsized political influence allowed the financier to use his Lincoln savings and loan as a base for his crimes. By the end of the decade, it was obvious that Keating had been looting his federally backed bank, gambling his investors' life savings with risky junk bonds, and dumping massive amounts of money into political campaigns. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you haven't already, then don't forget to subscribe and press that like button. Also hit the bell icon so you could never miss new updates from us. Stay safe, and we will meet you in the next one.